everybody. It's very nice to see all your faces. I'm very touched that all of you made it here. Yeah, so it's with great emotion that I have the chance to celebrate this day with all of you. To celebrate the release of my dad's book, writing The Waves of Dementia. And so I'd like to take a second, first of all, to thank all the people who made it possible. The Tova family, our second family that we have here. Diane, first and foremost, and the staff, all the volunteers and all the people here, all the people that come, of course. Yeah, they really, like I said, have been our second family for these past months and for this past year, really. So I want to thank you all, and say that you've really enriched our lives to a degree that it's hard to communicate, so thank you. For those of you who don't know my dad, maybe I should say a few words about him. It's actually difficult to describe him for me as a person. I take a lot of what he is for granted, but it's through other people coming here, through what I see right now, that I really get a sense of what he can, of how he brings us together, and really how we've come together as a family in the past 5 years as we've gone through this, beginning with a diagnosis, but we're really here to celebrate his whole life and his book, obviously. So yeah, I know my dad first and foremost as a father who homeschooled my brother and I for 14 years with my mom, which is an incredible feat. I'm not sure if people know what that involves, but it's really one of the biggest commitments you could make as a parent, to raise your kids yourself. And every day, yeah, come on. So every day I'm thankful for that, and for their decision to do that and to give us the childhood and education they knew or they thought was the best that they could give us. My dad is also a scholar, a lifelong scholar, a lifelong surfer, and a steward. He's been an environmental activist his whole life. He's worked for the nonprofit Surfrider Foundation in California for, was it like over 20 years? Really doing work to save the beaches in California and to keep the water, the oceans clean. He's been arrested because he's been protesting. You know, I remember a story. He was protesting the dumping of boulders onto the shorelines of the town we lived in, and in California, and he stood, I think, on the tracks to block the trains from coming. I mean, this is kind of like shows you a bit of the commitment he had and still has to the environment and to our planet. He's also had quite a rich academic career in his life, from getting a Fulbright to study the effects of pollution in Italy as a college graduate, to organizing an internship program for Stanford University, and being a member of the SICE, Johns Hopkins graduate program for international studies, which is quite a prestigious thing to do. He's always demonstrated a passion for intellectual adventure and curiosity, and again, I would say it's important to keep in mind how interconnected all these areas in his life have been. How his academic work has reflected his activist work and vice versa. So, without going on, I think this gives you a brief image, a brief picture of some of what he's done in his life, and with that, I'll pass it on to Odis. Thank you, Ezra, for that introduction. So in a moment I'm going to read, or we're going to read some passages out of my dad's book here, but before we do that, I want to say a few things about kind of the motivation behind this book for my dad, and I want to talk a little bit about the process of writing it. So 4 years ago, my dad received his diagnosis of PCA, which is short for posterior cortical atrophy, a rare form of Alzheimer's disease, which primarily affects visual and spatial processing and what they call the working memory. 1 year after his diagnosis, Mark, my dad, set out to write a book about his life. Today we gather here to celebrate that book's completion. But this is also a celebration of life, of resilience, and above all of community, and I think that's reflected in the fact that so many wonderful people showed up here today to celebrate my dad's life and his book, and this community that we're all a part of now. This book was, as I said, a collective effort, and it wouldn't have been possible without the generosity and the support of friends and loved ones, and of course without the magic of the Torah. It's a really special place. So my dad has dedicated his life, like Ezra said, to ocean activism and to strengthening whatever community that he happens to be a part of. And it was in this same generous and collective spirit that my dad set out to write a book. This was first and foremost a way for him to share the story of his life with those of us who love and care for him, and to emboss his lust for life indelibly in our memory after he was no longer able to do so himself. In addition, this book was a way for him to spread awareness about his disease, PCA, and to advocate that more resources be devoted to the study of this rare and debilitating disease. But my dad also set out to write this book to prove us wrong. He proved that to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease doesn't have to mean that one's life is over. That on the contrary, it can mean the beginning of new and beautiful things. That it can mean the start of a new chapter. That with some help from friends and loved ones, one can accomplish things that few of those blessed with good health even achieve in their lifetimes. When my dad started this project, he had already lost his ability to read and to write. My aunt and my dad's sister-in-law, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, Sarah Miller, transcribed his story as told by him. So Mark would lay out the chapters in his head, and then they would meet or speak on the phone once a week for several hours, and he would dictate the book essentially to her, and she would put it, she would write it down. So, I mean, this book wouldn't have been possible without her indispensable help and support. I mean, even as my dad began to lose his words, they persevered and saw this project through to the end. So, thank you, Sarah, wherever you are. That my dad decided to write a book after he could no longer read or write, I think gives you an idea of just the kind of person that he is. He's indefatigably determined, and the most generous person I know. He exudes a gentleness that would soften the hardest of hearts, and these qualities shine through in all that he does, and they transfigure everyone around him. In the midst of impenetrable heaviness, he succeeds in making us feel a bit lighter, I think. I can't express how proud of you I am, Dad, and how thankful I am to my Aunt Sarah, for one, and my Uncle David, who helped out with this project a lot, to Maud and Marco, and their unconditional hospitality, especially to Diane and the wonderful people here at the Toren, all of whom helped us through this phase of our lives and who made this book possible. And I'm especially grateful that I have such a wonderful and capable mother, Isabelle, who has managed the impossible task of simultaneously providing for us and caring for my dad full time, all with grace and compassion. So, thanks, Mom.
I have a wonderful situation here. What's their name? Detola. Yeah, Detola. Has made it so that I can have a great place that I'm at, and it's so fun that it's fabulous, and in fact, yeah, it's what I live on, and the people who are doing that really and also every there's also with Today I wouldn't have been able to anything at all if I hadn't been for Totoda. And even though sometimes people think that I'm things that are very difficult, and my life is very difficult, and I won't be. Well, I won't. I want to live nice things, so I'm not going to. Yeah. But seeing all these people here, and it's great, and Oh, what's that?
Give us an overture.
A little bit of music.
We'll end in music.
You just gotta, yeah. And what's,
So, Mark, thank you very, very much. I think it's time to celebrate. Yeah.
yeah, sounds good.
Yes, it sounds good. It's what you want. Yes, you have to party. En ik wil iedereen uitnodigen om mee te komen drinken en te komen feesten en te komen partyen. Ja, for life. Mark zei een tijdje geleden tegen mij: I'm still busy being life, living life. I'm still busy living life every day. En dat is wat we hier willen doen. Hè. Still busy living life. It's something you learned me. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.